Hi, I'm Andy. This is Project Car Haven, and today obviously I'm doing something that has nothing to do with cars. What I am doing is a beginner's perspective review of 3 different styles of bike that you might be considering buying as your first bike. In the sports bike category, we have a Kawasaki ZZR250, a cruiser style bike, a Yamaha V-Star 250. I guess it's like a naked open style bike, Royal Enfield Meteor 350. And to start with, I'm going to go over some of the technical aspects. Now, I know technical aspects of bikes might not be very interesting to you. You might be instantly bored, but I think it is kind of important to cover off on the differences between these bikes so you can get a better idea of what we're talking about. It's not apples for apples exactly. Engine-wise, the ZZR is actually the smallest engine of the 3 by 1 cubic centimetre. This is a 248cc bike, parallel twin, dual overhead cam, 4 valves per cylinder. Parallel meaning both cylinders are sort of pointing the same way. This is a 249cc V-twin with V-shaped opposed pistons to each other. Single overhead cam and only 2 valves per cylinder. And the Royal Enfield is 349cc's, single piston, single overhead cam and 2 valves per cylinder. So out of the 3, this one would flow and run the best. Now, other differences between these engines are the bore and stroke. Now, the bore is the diameter or hole size of the piston, and the stroke is how far it travels per revolution. This has a larger bore compared to these 2 bikes of 61mm and a stroke of 41.2. Now, those numbers are almost reversed for this bike, where the bore is 49mm, much smaller, but the stroke is much longer at 66. That makes for a lower revving but more torquey bike, which means there's more grunt down low in and out of normal traffic from stoplights than this bike. This one likes to be high revs all the time to keep in where the power's made. And the larger capacity bike with 1 cylinder, that piston size is far greater than these, so it has a very large 72mm bore, 85.8mm stroke, which is where it makes up the extra 100cc's of capacity while only having 1 cylinder compared to the twins of these 2. So that's a whole bunch of numbers that don't really mean much. What does it mean in the real world? Well, the shorter stroke means this revs much higher, and it's where the power is made. So the ZZR likes to be kept in the upper rev range to remain quite rideable. This bike here has more torque. It's better for stop-start traffic. More power is available from down low with this bike, so it's better for city riding, leaving from traffic lights, that sort of thing. And it's a similar story with this. There's plenty of torque. Quite a large bore and long stroke means it's quite lopey, long-made power. It's not blitzing itself off the line. It doesn't have strong top end, but the power supply is pretty even across the rev range of this bike. And the reason I say all of that is because power numbers don't mean everything when it comes to vehicles or bikes, because this being the most smoothest power delivery, most even, quite torquey, it's actually the lowest powered bike. It's 20.2 horsepower made at 6,100 RPM, but it does have the most torque out of the 3 bikes. This makes 27 Newton meters at 4,100 RPM, which is the low down power, the city riding traffic kind of thing, where you're going to be able to get away from other vehicles at very low speeds much easier than with these. Even with 100cc less capacity than the Royal Enfield, this V-twin makes slightly more power, 21 horsepower in fact, at 8,000 RPM, and it has the lowest torque. It's about 20.6 Newton meters at 6,000 RPM. The advantage of this bike over this one is the weight. That is about another 30 to 40 kilos more than this bike, which helps it move through the traffic at about the same pace, if not a bit faster. And the ZZR is the horsepower hero of the 3, with more than double of these bikes, makes 44.5 horsepower at an amazing 11,000 RPM and 24 Newton meters of torque, also at 11,000 RPM, which means all its power is way up in the rev range compared to these lower revving bikes. So in the weight categories, the V-Star is the lightest bike at 147 kilos wet. The ZZR is 160 kilos wet, and the Royal Enfield is the heaviest of the 3 at 191 kilos wet. Wet weight meaning when the bikes are loaded with coolant, if they need it like this, oil, fuel, etc. ZZR, largest fuel tank, 18 litres. Second largest, the Royal Enfield at 15 litres. And the V-Star has the smallest tank at 9.5 litres capacity. Now, seat height may be important depending on how tall or short you may be. The lowest seat height of the three, fairly obviously I would say, is the V-Star at 685 millimeters. The second tallest bike is the ZZR, which is 740, and the Royal Enfield slightly taller at 765. Now, there are kits where there are lower seats available to suit if you're shorter. For example, this bike here being quite low to the ground, the controls were too close and my legs were quite bunched up. I managed to put forward controls on to stretch my legs out for added comfort. So there are ways and means of making a bike suit your body frame, depending on if that's the style you want. You don't have to be stuck being cramped on a bike. An easy way to translate all those parameters is by giving a quarter-mile time. Real world, how fast can it cover a certain distance? Now, even though it is the larger bike, the Royal Enfield is the slowest, and it's measured to cover the quarter mile at 18.8 seconds at 120 kilometers per hour. Now, even though the horsepower and torque figures of the Royal Enfield and V-Star are quite close, the difference being this does the quarter mile in 15.5 seconds at 130 kilometers an hour. So that's about another 3 seconds faster than the Royal Enfield. And of course, the bike with the most power, the ZZR, does the quarter in 13.5 seconds at 157 kilometers an hour, which is no surprise. The posture on each bike is quite different. The ZZR being a sports bike, it's more compact and central over the bike, with handlebars set low to encourage you to sort of lean over a bit, get a better profile into the wind for more speed. The V-Star has a much more cruiser style laid back stance. It used to have controls that were about here, which caused me to sort of punch my back over and caused lower back pain. Now that I have the controls out here, it sort of opens up my back and it's far more comfortable to ride this way. The Royal Enfield's controls are more set up so you're more upright. It's still quite balanced. It's not built for speed, but personally I find this to be the most comfortable bike of the three because of the positioning. Okay, so the first test ride is going to be on the 2024 Royal Enfield Meteor 350. Now, to start with, I want to mention that I'm not an experienced rider myself. I've had my license for about 6 months and I don't do motorcycle reviews. I don't really know exactly what they cover off on in those things. So what I'm going to do is just merely offer some observations that I've made while riding these bikes. Now, the Royal Enfield Meteor 350, in my opinion, is an excellent choice for a first bike. It's positioned as a laid-back cruiser and it delivers a smooth and confidence-inspiring experience, exactly what beginners need when building their skills on two wheels. As previously mentioned, the Royal Enfield is a 350cc single-cylinder engine which runs fuel injection. It's the only bike of the three that does have fuel injection. The other two are carburetted, and it produces about 20 horsepower and 27 newton meters of torque. Now, while those numbers might not sound intimidating, it's actually the point. The power delivery is smooth, predictable, and linear. It's fast enough to be fun in the city streets or in weekend back roads, but not so powerful that it overwhelms inexperienced riders. The 5-speed gearbox is slick and forgiving, with a light clutch that won't fatigue your hand in stop-start traffic. And through this long right-hand sweeper that tightens at the end, something came up with this bike that didn't with the others. As the corner tightened, the bike started feeling like it was moving around a little bit. The only thing I can put that down to is the factory tyres probably have softer sidewalls than the other two bikes. It's not something to be concerned about, but it is something to keep in mind. An easy remedy for this is when it comes time to buy new tyres, spend a bit more money on something that's good quality and it will get rid of that issue. Even though the Royal Enfield has the highest seat height of the three bikes, it's still quite approachable for shorter riders. Now, my wife is 5'7" and can stand flat-footed at traffic lights, no problem. The riding position is classic cruiser, which is upright with slightly forward set foot pegs and wide handlebars. This neutral stance makes it easy to control and comfortable over longer rides, which is ideal for beginners still getting used to body balance and control at low speeds. Because of the extra torque that this bike has, I didn't feel the need to downshift to get up this long incline. The bike handled it quite well. Even though this is the heaviest bike of the three, it still feels surprisingly agile. It's confidence inspiring at low speeds and easy to maneuver in tight city traffic. The bike has a really good turning radius and can handle potholes and uneven roads without rattling your teeth loose. And there being the newest bike, this has a few more modern tech advantages over the other two. There's an optional tripper navigation unit which isn't fitted to this bike, which is a small TFT colour screen which can link to your phone via Bluetooth and gives you on-site navigation in a pod in front of you, and also has a USB charging port for phone charging while on the go. This bike is quite fuel efficient, depending on how you ride it of course, returning around 3.5 litres per 100 kilometres. One of the downsides I sort of can see is if you're a bit of a smaller rider, the extra weight of this bike might make it a bit more difficult to handle, but it's just one of those things you need to sort of see for yourself. Getting a bike with retro styling and sound but has a few of the modern technology amenities, the Royal Enfield Meteor 350 might just be the bike for you. Now the next bike is a 2008 Yamaha V-Star 250. This is a classic example of a bike built with new riders in mind. It's an approachable size, laid-back cruiser styling and simple mechanics. I think it checks almost every box for someone who's just starting out on their two-wheel journey. The V-Star 250 runs a 249cc air-cooled V-twin, which puts out around 21 horsepower, which is enough to keep things engaging without ever feeling overwhelming. The power delivery is linear and forgiving, which makes it ideal for practicing smooth throttle control. It's perfect for learning in town and can handle short highway stints, although it is more comfortable at lower speeds due to the gearing. Now coming into the long right-hand sweeper, the V-Star feels solid and secure. The undulations in the bend aren't throwing the bike off at all. It feels quite smooth. Even as the bend tightens, the grip still remains and the bike exits smoothly. Lightest of the three bikes means the V-Star is easy to handle at low speeds, simple to park, and likely to be less intimidating for smaller or first-time riders. Also, having the lowest seat height of the three bikes ensures most riders can easily plant both feet flat on the ground, which is a massive confidence booster when you're learning to stop and balance at traffic lights or in tight spots. While travelling up the long incline, I didn't really need to downshift, it was just a matter of squeezing on a bit more throttle, and the torque sort of helped pull it up the hill with ease.
This bike has a smooth clutch, which makes it easy to change gear, and a beginner-friendly nature. It has good balance and neutral handling. It doesn't dive aggressively into corners or require any real muscle to control. This bike also has a reputation for rock-solid reliability. It is carburetted, which might seem old school, but that also means it's simple. It's DIY-friendly maintenance and no complex electronics to worry about, and parts are affordable and widely available. Fuel economy for the V-Star is actually really good. It gets around 3 litres per 100 kilometres, which makes it perfect for commuting or weekend exploring on a budget. A couple of the drawbacks are this bike doesn't have a fuel gauge, which has a reserve switch in the tank, so you just need to be mindful of how far you've gone with how much fuel you've put in. And the brakes and suspension are fairly basic. They're fine for casual riding, but not really performance focused. Also, its highway performance is limited. It will cruise at 100 kilometers per hour, but it doesn't have much room to spare at that point. It's not ideal for high-speed touring. Low cruiser is what you're looking for, you'd be hard pressed to find something better than this. And the last bike, Kawasaki ZZR250. I think this is one of those bikes that manages to bridge the gap between a sporty performance bike and everyday usability, which makes it a standout choice for new riders who want more than just a beginner commuter. It's sleek, lightweight and unintimidating, which gives learners a taste of a sport bike style without the fear factor. As I mentioned previously, the ZZR250 is powered by a 248cc parallel twin engine. Produces around 44 horsepower, which is more than most bikes in this engine size class, which means it has plenty of punch for confident highway merging and overtaking, enough mid-range power to stay engaging as your skills grow, still linear and forgiving throttle response, which is ideal for learning. Newer riders who want something sporty but not twitchy will end up appreciating how smooth and usable this engine is. That's kind of important because you need to learn throttle control, so when you do move to a larger bike, you don't get caught off guard and get yourself into trouble. Heading into the long right-hand sweeper highlights that this is the best handling bike of the three. It encourages you to lean further over while not giving up any grip. This is an ideal bike to learn on handling tight turns and twisty tracks, which tend to be favoured by most motorcycle users. 60 kilograms wet, this is still quite a light bike, light enough for smaller or inexperienced riders to control confidently. Whether it's slow speed navigation of car parks or filtering through traffic, its low weight and balanced chassis make it feel nimble. The low seat height is low enough for most riders to still flat-foot it at stops, which is another addition to your confidence. Unlike more aggressive sports bikes, the ZZR250 has a semi-upright riding position, which means the handlebars are higher and the pegs are lower than on a true super sport, which means less wrist pressure, better visibility in traffic, and more comfort on longer rides or commutes. This makes it an excellent first sports bike for learners who want the look and feel of a fully fared bike without the ergonomics of a race replica. The sport touring geometry of the bike makes it feel planted and predictable. The suspension is soft enough to handle rough roads, but stable enough to encourage cornering confidence, which is perfect for riders getting used to leaning the bike and building trust in traction. The front and rear disc brake setup provides decent stopping power and good feedback, especially for learners still building brake control skills. The fuel economy is the worst of the three bikes, averaging around 4.2 litres per 100 kilometres, but obviously that can get worse the more you twist your right wrist. But it does have a large 17 litre fuel tank, which helps extend its range. The twin dials and fuel gauge are easy to read, and they include gear position indicator in some versions of the bike. The rear seat has grabber handle, which is pillion friendly if you want to carry a passenger later, and it also has option for luggage, which has little clips at the rear which you're able to strap on saddlebags or a top box for commuting or light touring. So if you're looking for a beginner sports bike that's going to encourage you to develop your skills, throttle control, leaning and build your trust in traction, I don't think you can go too far wrong with something like the ZZR250. Now, as far as beginner bikes go in Australia, you can get larger bikes than these. You can get up to about 660 cc's, but many years in the past, the capacity limit was 250, which is why we're sort of looking at what we have here. It's also what I happen to have available because I bought this bike. My wife then bought the ZZR. That needed to be shipped from quite far away. While we're waiting for that to be delivered, the Royal Enfield popped up, and that's the bike she really wanted, so now we have 3 bikes. So when it comes down to it, the choice for your first bike really comes down to personal preference. Like, are you sold on having to have a sports bike? You want to eventually get yourself a big fat Harley and this is a good starting point, or something that will just keep running no matter what? It doesn't really matter what you pick as long as you enjoy riding it, you know? It's what it's all about, really. So I hope this was helpful in some way. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.